Today, or right now in this particular video, we want to talk about understanding the down payment arbitrage and really understanding what it is. I've had so many emails, we have had calls into our office, and people trying to wrap their head around what the heck the down payment arbitrage is and why it's such an incredible opportunity. The people that know and can wrap their head around this are going, this is insane, this is incredible. I did a Facebook Live last night, and there was a guy that was telling his story how he just literally closed on a $29,000 deal by following exactly what I'm teaching and talking about right here. We do at least anywhere from 4 to 6 deals a month. Just in this method, not including all the other deals we do that are just regular wholesale deals. These are deals that literally enable you to skyrocket your business, understanding the way it's structured. So we're gonna get into kind of exactly what it is so you have a basis of where we're starting that we can build on it through the rest of this course. All right, so to understand down payment arbitrage, we first have to understand wholesaling. What is wholesaling? How does it work? And we're gonna do a straight comparison between wholesaling and between the down payment arbitrage. Now remember, down payment arbitrage is a strategy, a wholesaling strategy. So it has the underlying concept of how we get paid is the same. The only difference is how we basically structure the contracts. That's the most important part. So when it comes to the traditional wholesale deal, the key component is locating a distressed seller. 95% of everybody that you and I know, all our friends, our family, our relatives, our coworkers, all of our Facebook friends and stuff like that, 95% of our circle of influence and everybody we know are going to sell traditionally through a realtor. They're gonna call up a realtor, they're gonna get, figure out the price of their house, they're going to, the realtor is gonna come over and the realtor is gonna say, hey, you have to declutterize, you have to paint, you have to get your carpet cleaned, you have to fix your landscaping, you have to do whatever. They're gonna give you a laundry list of stuff you gotta do to get the property ready to list and show in its best light. So they're gonna turn around and give you a whole list, and then what they're gonna do is they're gonna take a bunch of pictures and they're gonna stick it on the MLS, right? And then they're gonna cross their fingers and hope to sell the property, and everybody in the MLS, and there's buyers potentially looking for it. The buyers are gonna going to set up an appointment with the agent, or there's actually now a cool app. All they gotta do is be able to, I think it's called like a showing app or something like that. They schedule a showing. Seller gets the information. They have to basically vacate the property. So they go to Starbucks, they go whatever. There's a lockbox on their door. The agent comes over with the seller, walks them through the property, looks in their closets, looks in the pantry, looks all over the place, and then decides if they want to purchase a property. If they do, they submit an offer. There's typically a 10-day inspection period. Then they're gonna ask the seller to fix a bunch of stuff on the property, and then they're gonna basically, if they get past that point, they're gonna go to closing. So that's 95% of the people. The typical days on market are about a little over 100 days on market that a property sits before it sells. So now a seller has to go all through that, and that's 95%. So you see companies like Open Door and OfferPad and Zillow is now coming out trying to bypass that realtor and try to make it as easy as possible for the seller. Now the cool thing is, with the down payment arbitrage, we don't compete with any of those because Zillow, OfferPad, and all these other companies do not know how to structure deals like this. That's why they're so exciting and it's so predominant, because there's literally no competition. The majority of wholesalers out there, all the other wholesalers in your market, you're worried about competition, they don't know how to do this. And even if they do, it's fine because there's so many potential deals out there that come across the desk. So in a traditional wholesale deal, what's different than a traditional sale is that we're only looking for 5%. Now, that's important because 5% of the people are distressed. They're distressed meaning they don't have time to wait 100+ days. They don't have the money to go fix up the property. They don't want to clean the carpet. The place is essentially trashed. They're in a situation where they need to sell, not want to sell. There's a big difference between need to sell and want to sell. So what we do as real estate wholesalers, and even as down payment arbitrage technicianers, right, if that's a word, what we're gonna do is we are looking for distressed sellers that need to sell. So in this particular example, we locate a distressed seller and we sign a contract with them. And on the contract, there's essentially three major components of the contract. One is the purchase price, two is the closing time frame. We typically do 30 to 45 days. And three is what's called an out clause. So back to our example right here, we locate a distressed seller, we sign a contract, and on the contract, it's a $100,000 purchase price. We have a 30-day closing, and we have an additional backout clause, couple backout clause, subject to partner's approval, and 30-day closing with a 30-day inspection, and that our earnest money is the sole basically, if we in the event of a default, the sole remedy is the earnest money. So that's number one, right? Then what we're gonna do is now we're under contract, it does something incredibly important. It gives us what's called equitable interest. A seller can only sell to one person. That's it. They only can sell to one person. And because they only can sell to one person, and that person's you, that means you control that property. And because you control that property, he can't sell it to 10 different people. And whoever signs the highest contract is going to get the deal. You can't do that, right? You only can sell it to one person. That gives you equitable interest in the property. And with that equitable interest, you have the right to turn around and find a buyer that can purchase your equitable interest. So what we're gonna do is locate a cash buyer. Now, the interesting thing is we technically don't need a cash buyer for our wholesale deals that we're doing with the down payment arbitrage. I'm talking about the traditional wholesale deal. We have to go to a cash buyer because we can't go to a conventional buyer or an FHA buyer in a traditional means, because those properties or those buyers are essentially underwriting those properties, and they have to show a chain of title of what it's called, where the property goes from the seller directly to the buyer. Well, if you're in between and you have a contract on it, it can't go from the seller to you to the buyer, because it's gonna be what's called a break in the chain of title. So that's why, as wholesalers, traditional wholesalers, we wholesale our properties to cash buyers that either pay cash or they use hard money funding or whatever means possible to come up, in this case, with $110,000. So we're gonna locate the cash buyer, show you how to do that. We sign another contract with the cash buyer, it's $110,000. And on that contract is 7 days. Remember, we are 30 days with the seller, 7 days with the closer. So it has to be such a smoking deal that the buyer is gonna jump to get that deal out of 7 days. So that means the buyer's biggest decision, their biggest decision point in the entire process is the amount of equity they have in the property. Now, I have over 40,000 plus people on my email list, and we survey our email list and their email list of buyers. These are actual buyers that purchase our properties. So we survey them and ask them what is their biggest buying decision. Their biggest buying decision is equity. So in this particular case, if the house, say, theoretically was worth $200,000, guess what? If you put it out to the market at $110,000, you're gonna have people jumping through hoops to get this closed, to give you cash, to give the title company cash, to sign a contract with you for that $110,000. Now what's gonna happen, they're gonna have a 7-day close, and they're like, fine, no problem. I used to buy properties at the county courthouse auctions for foreclosure auctions. I would show up with a $10,000 cashier's check. If I won the bid at the auction, within 24 hours, next day, I would have to pay cash for the entire property. And we were buying 2 and 3 and 4 properties a week at the auction. And literally, we put 10,000 down, pay cash the next day. 10,000 down, pay cash the next day. What's cool about this is you locate a cash buyer, they can put down a $2,500 earnest money deposit, and they can have 7 days to close the thing. So for a regular buyer, right, versus a buyer that's buying at the courthouse steps, this is a huge win for them. They got a whole 7 days to figure out how to come up with the $110,000. So that's the traditional. And what's gonna happen is we are going to do what's called the double escrow. And the actual double escrow situation right here is we are gonna basically have it to where the buyer is gonna wire in the funds to the closing company. And the closing company, right, is gonna take care of all the paperwork and all the money. They're gonna take care of all the paperwork and all the money. And for them doing that, they're gonna give, in this particular case, remember, they're gonna give 100,000. See, the buyer's gonna bring in 110,000, of which 100,000 goes to the seller, right? And the balance, the difference, goes to you, and that's how you get a $10,000 check. Here's a traditional example of a wholesale deal. So here's a property on Pearson. We signed a contract for 110. We put it out into our cash buyers to try to find cash buyers on this thing, put it on Craigslist, put it out to the market, and sold, got a contract price on it. So our contract with our buyer, right, in this particular case was 139,000. A profit was 28,768, and that's after paying closing costs and commission. The lead source was direct mail, and the method was a double escrow. A double escrow means that the buyer's bringing in 100% of the funds. The other way to get paid we talked about is called an assignment, and that's when we sell our contract, okay? So let's talk about the down payment arbitrage and what's different about it, right? In this particular case, remember, we've got a $100,000 contract and we're signing it for 110, right? In a down payment arbitrage situation, the same thing happens, right? It's still a $100,000 purchase, but instead of, right, having a $100,000 purchase, we're gonna have a $90,000 mortgage on the property and a $10,000 down payment. Now, the seller still has to be distressed. You still have to have a distressed seller in the situation. And we're still gonna sign a contract with a 30 to 45 day close. We're still gonna have our 3 out clauses. We're gonna have our earnest money clause. We're gonna have our subject to partner's approval clause, and we're gonna have our inspection periods in there as well. So it's gonna be exactly the same contract, just a little different verbiage in the contract, which we're gonna explain. And it's a $90,000 mortgage, $10,000 down payment. So when we're looking at the acquisition, how much cash is needed to get the deal done? Well, the mortgage is already in place, so the cash needed is 10 grand. So if we go back over here, and the purchase price in this particular case on a traditional wholesale deal, the $100,000 purchase, how much cash is needed? $100,000. The only difference in this is there's a mortgage of $90,000 that we can work with, and that's what the down payment arbitrage is all about. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna locate a buyer. But the cool thing is it doesn't have to be just a cash buyer. It opens up the amount of buyer pool that we could sell to. We can sell to a retail buyer. What if a retail buyer wants to live there? We can sell to a buy and hold buyer that's gonna buy and hold it for an investment. We can sell it to a fix and flip buyer, someone that wants to go in and do a fix and flip. The issue is, in this particular case, if you got a lead that came across your desk, and the house was worth, say, $110,000, $120,000, $100,000, and they owed $90,000 on the deal, and they wanted $10,000, you would pass on that deal. This would be a deal that you pass on because you're deeming that there's no equity and there's no potential in the deal. I'm gonna show you that there is. So what we're gonna do is locate the cash buyer. We do the same thing, we do the same thing. Guess what? Mortgage, $90,000, but the down payment is the only thing that's different. Down payment arbitrage. Right? So we're gonna arbitrage that down payment. 10,000 goes to the seller, 20,000 is from the buyer, right? 7-day closing time frame, exact same thing. And we bring it to the title company, just like we do a traditional wholesale deal. The buyer brings in $20,000 as the down payment. The title company in the middle here, they manage all the paperwork and they manage all the money. So what happens is we can do a double escrow or do an assignment. We could sell our contract, the $90,000 plus 10 contract, to the buyer. We could sell it to them for the difference. Well, the difference there is the same as was the difference in a traditional wholesale deal. We're talking $10,000. $10,000 on a deal that everybody and their brother would pass on because they believed there was no equity in the deal, okay? So what happens on a double escrow, the buyer wires in, not the $90,000 because it's already there. It's already in place. They're gonna wire in the $20,000, of which $10,000 goes to the seller, the $90,000 stays in place, and guess what? $10,000 goes to you. So that's huge. You know how many opportunities are out there in the marketplace right now? So here's a recent deal we completed. Mortgage 279. Value of the property, retail value is 305, right? How would you handle this deal if it came across your desk? You do the evaluation, you see the comps on it, it's only worth 305. Mortgage 279, right? Or essentially 280. And at the time, the seller wanted $10,000 cash. That's what she wanted. So buy price in this particular case was 286. Lead source came from ringless voicemail, which is amazing. And the method we did was an assignment. This is our acquisition. This is our front-end acquisition. So property's worth 305. She wanted $10,000, but we gave her $7,000. 279 was the mortgage. Buy price is 286. That was her acquisition. On her disposition, selling the property, right? Mortgage is still 279. That stays constant. But we got from the cash buyer, from the buyer who purchased it from us, $23,000 down. So his buy price was 302. Well, it's only worth 305. Why is there value there? Why would a buyer buy a house that's worth 305 for 302? Why? Because of the terms. Terms, there's two things. We talked about cash buyer equity. The other component when surveying our list that was the biggest buying decision was terms, the terms. Well, guess what? He can control a $300,000 property with $23,000 down. He can own it, he can control it, and he can turn around, fix it, and sell it. We probably won't, but he can rent it. So our profit per putting those two together is the difference in the down payment. Well, we got $23,000 from the buyer minus $7,000, right? We got $16,000. We got, after closing costs and fees, $15,743. And that was all done and completed, signed and closed and paid in 12 days or less, right? In 12 days, in 12 days. So imagine 12 days, you get a lead to come in, you got it signed up, you go to escrow, you get the payoff information, you put it out your list, you have a buyer, he brings in $23,000, you close the transaction, 12 days later, you walk away with a $15,743 check. How would you feel? You probably feel pretty darn good. So here's another example, right? I explained this, I was explaining this to, I don't know who was, a buddy of mine, right? And he actually owns a construction company. He goes, I don't get it. I was like, dude, what are you talking about? You don't get it. Here, check this out. I said, here. And I got a Range Rover Sport, and I said, and I said, hey. And it pretty much looks like that. So I turned around and said, hey, bud. I said, and let's say theoretically, and these numbers aren't real at all. These are completely made up numbers, just so you know. But I said, theoretically, let's say the blue buck on the car was $95,000. Let's say theoretically I have a loan amount of $79,000 on the car, right? What I could do is you could buy the car from me, the loan of $79,000 stays in place, you give me $16,000 down, and you can take over payments. And he goes, that's exactly what we're doing with the down payment arbitrage, but we're doing it with real estate. We're doing it with real estate. So think about it. You wanted to buy my car, and let's say theoretically I owed $79,000, and I wanted to sell the car for $95,000. Well, guess what? You give me $16,000, you take over the payments, and now you are driving around in my car. The exact same thing happened with this property. Seller owed $279,000. We gave her $7,000, right? And we turned around and flipped it, arbitraged it, sold it to a buyer, kept the $279,000 in place, and the only difference was $23,000. And we made $15,743. Guys, you can do this. Buyers love these type of deals because they don't have to go through the entire financing process like they would do a regular loan. So that's huge.